Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Conversations with Catherine. I'm very excited to have with me Dr. Lisa Strohman. She is a psychologist and an author and many other things. And it's so good to talk to you, Doctor.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. So I thought you were the perfect person to talk about this because we are on Zoom, but we're talking about Zoom fatigue and how we deal with it, because I think a lot of people are so overscheduled with Zoom that they're just exhausted mentally, physically. Are you finding that's the situation with a lot of people these days?
I think it's spanning like from kids to adults to people who are actually like even retired trying to stay connected to families. I think everybody is a little bit over tethered to their
Yeah.
computer and their little tiny green dot that we all stare into when we go on Zoom.
And so if we're feeling this exhaustion cognitively,
Mhm.
physically, what lends itself to that? Is it the fact that maybe some of us are working from home and having to rely on Zoom for every relationship we have, and it's back to back meetings and having to worry about how you look and what you're saying and what you're not saying and who's going to walk in behind you and all of that?
I think it's a little bit of all of it. I think one of the principles that I've always talked about is how much technology and that demand time. We don't blink as much. We don't think about little things like our posture as much when we're behind computers. I just saw that you
If you
changed
said
your
that,
posture, right?
I sat up, I mean.
Yeah, no. So I think that there's a lot that stresses our bodies in ways that impacts us. Our thinking isn't as clear, and we don't have downtime. So,
Mhm.
I noticed pretty immediately that I really coveted that 20 to 30-minute drive time where I could just kind of process my day before just opening up my door and like being slammed with whatever issues my kids were having at the moment. So,
Well,
I think
and
that it's a lot.
And for a lot of people, going to work and having that personal interaction where you could watch each other's body language and pick up on little nuances, you're not able to do that.
Right, and you find out very quickly. It's very interesting to me on Zoom calls. I think I had the top that I had was over 60, where everybody had their camera showing, which was very interesting because then you find like the beach Zoom people who like to play with their background, but they don't quite know how to get their hands to disappear. So it really does give personality, in some ways, a little bit different perspective because when we're in the corporate environment, we're dressed in suits and we have a role and we have a title behind our desk. It's different than seeing people in their home environment. So
Hmm.
there is some good that comes of it, but it definitely makes us all a little bit, I think, overwhelmed when we
Hmm.
think about the time we're putting behind the lens.
Well, and if we do too many in one day, I try to avoid that. I tend to feel really mentally exhausted. And I think to myself, I haven't even gotten up from the chair in hours. I really haven't done much. Why am I so tired?
Well, I think that again, it goes back to the lights, it goes back to the attention to detail that we know that if it's our time in a Zoom, that it's our time to present or to talk. So we have to be on point, we need to be articulate. So I often, like yesterday, probably had maybe a dozen now, like pretty bad, severe headaches, almost kind of transitioning into like a slight migraines I've never had before. And I think it's because of this increased time behind screens and doing what we're doing right now.
So, what are your suggestions for relieving, I should say, some of that exhaustion and some of that physical just fatigue that we're feeling because we're all a little oversaturated with the video conferencing?
I think that if you're in a leadership position or just for yourselves, even build in time for breaks. So taking stretch breaks, taking eye breaks where you kind of look off and focus on something in the distance and then focus back in. That can help relieve our tension in our ocular centers. Uh, Hydration. I think that when we're on camera, we're not drinking as much, so we're not like nutritionally taking care of ourselves as well. But I definitely think the building in the breaks where if you're going to have like an hour behind a screen, then you need to at least give yourself 20 minutes off time so that you can just kind of take a deep breath, walk around, and then kind of regroup, which
Hmm.
is probably easier for leaders than it is for those of us that have to show up and do things on the clock.
Exactly. And we should also probably build in some of the happy hour time and the fun time that we have with family and friends that we're probably actually having deeper conversations with, don't you think? Because this is the only way we can see each other.
Right. I think that there's a lot more family time happening now than has ever happened. I think on the flip side, I think a lot of people are exercising, at least in our general area where it's warm weather and people can get outside a little bit. I think that we're actually giving ourselves a little bit more attention towards our own care. But the family or the fun time or the friend time, that part, again, it's not the same as sitting down, being ready to present something or be on point with something. It's just being free and silly. You can walk around, nobody really cares. So building that in is a great idea.
Great suggestions. One of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this specifically is because it involves technology, and you are a leader when it comes to helping families and kids avoid, the many online dangers that exist. One of the things that you've created, which is so fabulous, is the Digital Citizen Academy. Tell me a little bit about that.
So DCA was really built out of my heart from being a psychologist with teenagers and families and working in the schools about how do I teach online safety, basically instructional classes for kids on what to do and what not to do. And it was as simple as thinking through, if your kids are going to drive a car, they need to have a permit or they need to have some sort of certification that we know that they know how to make good choices. DCA was built out of that, was to create a program that was K through 12, that we could create an age appropriate instructional platform for kids. And we actually just got a 501c3 nonprofit status. So we're so excited to be able to bring some resources as well that we can grant into some of the schools and into homes, actually, if they need it, for families if they're struggling with it.
Well, it's definitely something that all families deal with on some level. And you and I have been talking about this for, I think, 5 years now. So it's nice to see it progress and getting that status, that nonprofit status. It's wonderful that you provide this service for families. And I thank you for that, because you've certainly helped me.
Thank you.
Well, I want to let everybody know that they can find you on your website, drlisastrohman.com. You are awesome. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you.
Always. Thank you for having me on.